I remember perfectly the day I realized that something had broken forever. It was when I saw that Balenciaga, a fashion house with more than a century of history, was selling a bag that was, literally, an exact replica of a trash bag. The only difference was that it was made of calfskin and cost $1,750. It wasn't an onion parody, it was a real product that real people were buying. At that moment I realized that luxury wasn't sick. Nor was it in crisis. It was dead. Or at least the luxury we once knew, the kind based on craftsmanship, exclusivity, and sublime quality, had been replaced by a cynical imposter that laughed in our faces while emptying our wallets. The question that obsessed me from then on wasn't, who would buy this? But a much deeper and darker one. How the hell did we get here? How did we go from revering the work of a craftsman to paying the price of a used car for a tasteless joke? To understand the fall, you first have to understand the rise. For decades, luxury was the ultimate aspirational dream. After the austerity of the war, the world wanted to shine, and European houses like Chanel, Dior, or Hermès became the ultimate symbol of status and sophistication. Buying one of their products wasn't just acquiring a well-made object, it was buying a piece of history. An entry ticket to an exclusive club. It was the equivalent of Patrick Bateman's business card in American Psycho. A silent but powerful validation of your success. This idea accelerated in the 80s and 90s with logomania. Suddenly, having a quality wallet was no longer enough. It had to shout, "I'm from Gucci," from across the street. The logo became a social shortcut. It communicated wealth, good taste, or at least the ability to buy it, and belonging to an elite. Hip-hop adopted these brands, taking them out of the salons of Paris and putting them on the streets of the Bronx, giving them a new level of global cool. It was the pinnacle of aspirational marketing. They weren't selling products, they were selling an instant upgrade to your identity. But like at any good party, when too many people manage to sneak in, the exclusive atmosphere starts to fade. What happens when the dream of being unique becomes everyone's uniform? This is where the architect of modern luxury comes onto the scene. And paradoxically, the man who sowed the seeds of its demise, Bernard Arnault. Arnault was neither a designer nor a craftsman. He was an engineer and a financial genius. In the mid-80s, he saw that luxury houses were for the most part family businesses, prestigious but financially inefficient. And he had a revolutionary and ruthless idea. What if he bought them and managed them not as art workshops, but as an investment portfolio? That's how LVMH was born. Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy. A conglomerate that today owns more than 75 brands, including Tiffany & Co. to Dior and Fendi. Arnault applied relentless business logic to a world that had previously been governed by tradition. He centralized production, optimized supply chains, and above all, scaled marketing to a global level. He turned historic names into incredibly efficient money-making machines. It was a brilliant move that made him the richest man in the world. But it came at a hidden cost. The artisanal quality, which had once been the foundation of these brands, began to take a backseat to the efficiency of mass production and profit margins. The wolf had entered the sheepfold, dressed in the finest cashmere. But what remains of a brand's soul when its heart stops being a workshop and becomes a spreadsheet? The business model of modern luxury is based on a fascinating psychological principle known as Veblen goods. These are products whose demand increases as their price rises, defying all economic logic. The high price isn't a drawback, it's the product's main feature. But for it to work, you need a key ingredient: scarcity. Or more precisely, the illusion of scarcity. Major brands like Rolex or Hermès with its Birkin bag are masters at this. They could manufacture many more watches or handbags to meet demand. But they deliberately restrict supply. They create waiting lists that last for years, generating such a powerful aura of exclusivity that people are willing to pay double or triple on the resale market just to skip the line. It's a strategy of artificial scarcity. For years, the industry went so far as to burn millions of dollars worth of unsold stock to protect this illusion and prevent products from ending up in outlets, a practice that Burberry admitted to doing until public outrage forced them to stop in 2018. It's like when Supreme sold a brick with its logo for $30 and people resold it for $1,000. The value isn't in the object, it's in the hype, in the narrative. And luxury brands have become expert storytellers. You can sustain a house of cards based on perception when the actual quality of the card keeps getting worse. If this strategy sounds familiar to you, it's because it's not new at all. The luxury fashion industry simply copied the playbook from one of the most successful and deceptive marketing campaigns in history, the diamond campaign. Before the 20th century, diamonds weren't particularly rare, nor were they considered the quintessential gemstone for engagement. But the company De Beers, which controlled almost 90% of the world's supply, spent a fortune on an advertising campaign that convinced us that a diamond is forever. They created a need out of nothing. They linked a stone of crystallized carbon to eternal love and established the arbitrary rule that an engagement ring should cost 2 months' salary. They manipulated supply and demand to inflate the prices of a relatively common gem. What LVMH and Kering have done is apply De Beers' strategy to handbags, shoes, and belts. They have taken objects with a relatively low production cost and, through masterful marketing and strict control of distribution, have assigned them a stratospheric cultural and monetary value. If we already know that the value of diamonds is for the most part a social construct, how long will it take us to realize that we're paying for the Louis Vuitton logo with the same logic? This is where the house of cards really starts to shake. While prices have skyrocketed to absurd levels, quality has gone into free fall. A Chanel classic flap bag, which in the 1990s cost about $1,150, now goes for over $10,000. Has the quality improved tenfold? No. In fact, collector and luxury repair forums are full of complaints about lower quality leathers, hardware that loses its gold plating, and imperfect stitching on bags fresh out of the boutique. The open secret is that many brands have moved part of their production to countries with cheaper labor, only doing the final finishing in France or Italy so they can stamp the coveted Made in Italy label. According to a Deloitte report, gross profit margins in the luxury industry, can exceed 50%. This means that the $3,000 handbag probably cost less than $900 to make, and that includes marketing, distribution, and the rent for the store on Fifth Avenue. The cost of materials and labor is a tiny fraction. What you're really paying for is the logo, the status, and the in-store experience, not superior craftsmanship. The inevitable question is, how long can a brand keep stretching the rope of customer loyalty, raising prices while quality plummets, before that rope finally snaps? The response to the abuses of the luxury industry has been a quiet revolution taking place on 2 fronts. The first is the second-hand market. Platforms like The RealReal or Vestiaire Collective have exploded, creating a liquid and reliable secondary market. This breaks the brand's control over prices and scarcity. Why wait 3 years for a new Rolex? If you can buy an almost identical one, already certified with a single click, the second front is much more disruptive. The rise of superfakes or high-end replicas. Entire communities on Reddit are dedicated to finding factories in China that produce replicas almost indistinguishable from the originals, often using the same materials and sometimes, supposedly, even coming out the back door of the very same factories that manufacture for the big brands. For $300, you can have a bag that even an expert would need a magnifying glass to tell apart from the original that costs $3,000. This not only democratizes the look, but also exposes the uncomfortable truth. The profit margin for brands isn't in the quality, it's in the name. The only real difference between the authentic product and the replica is a certificate and an extra zero on the price tag. What exactly are you authenticating? One of the industry's biggest deceptions lies in the label. That little phrase, made in France or made in Italy, evokes images of artisans in picturesque workshops. The reality is much grayer. European Union labeling regulations are surprisingly lax. To get the Made in Italy label, for example, it only requires that the last substantial transformation of the product takes place in the country. This has created a gigantic legal loophole. A brand can cut the leather in Romania, sew the parts in Turkey, and add the hardware manufactured in China, and then send the semi-assembled product to a workshop in Florence where a worker puts the finishing touches on it and attaches the zipper. Voila! Legally, it is made in Italy. It's a system designed to keep costs low while maintaining the perception of high European quality. The big luxury corporations have fiercely lobbied to keep these definitions vague because their profitability model depends on it. So the next time you see that label, ask yourself, am I paying for Italian craftsmanship or for a low-cost European assembly tour? If quality is no longer the main selling point, what are these brands really selling? They sell a solution to a very modern fear, the fear of being invisible, of not being enough. We live in an image-driven culture, fueled by Instagram, where validation is measured in likes and the appearance of success is almost more important than success itself. Luxury has become the uniform of the global aspirational class. Buying a belt with a double G buckle isn't a fashion decision, it's a psychological transaction. It's an attempt to buy security, to rent status for a day. It's the equivalent of paying for the blue check on Twitter. A shortcut to feeling like part of a club, even if the club no longer has any real entry barriers beyond money. The convenience of buying status is an incredibly powerful value proposition in an anxious world. Brands don't sell products, they sell a temporary antidote to social anxiety. But what real value does a status symbol have when it becomes so ubiquitous that it stops signifying something exclusive? Behind the polished ad campaigns and boutiques lit up like museums, there's a dark side. The luxury industry has been repeatedly accused of unethical practices. Greenwashing is rampant. Brands launch a sustainable line with organic cotton, while their main business model relies on promoting fast consumption cycles, petroleum-based materials, and completely opaque supply chains. Then there are the labor scandals. Reports and lawsuits have emerged about working conditions in subcontracted workshops, even in Europe, where immigrant workers are exploited for miserable wages to produce goods that will be sold for thousands of euros. The scandal of Burberry burning its inventory in 2018, valued at over $37 million, was just the tip of the iceberg that revealed a systemic practice designed to protect brand image at the cost of monumental waste. Luxury sells a dream. But for some workers in the supply chain, the reality is a nightmare. Can an industry that is based on beauty and perfection survive when its ethics are shown to be so imperfect and ugly? Knowing that product quality no longer justifies the price, brands have doubled down on the only area they still fully control: the customer experience. CX, as it's known in English. Entering a luxury boutique. Today, it's like stepping onto a theater set. The store's design is impeccable. The lighting is perfect. They offer you a glass of champagne. The staff treats you like royalty. The packaging is a work of art in itself. The rigid bag, the tissue paper, the satin ribbon, the magnetic box, this whole ritual is designed for one thing: to make you feel that your $3,000 purchase is justified. It's a choreography of opulence. It's the Disney World magic that makes you forget you just paid $20 for popcorn. The experience is so overwhelmingly pleasurable that it numbs your critical judgment about the product you're actually taking home. You're paying for the theater, for the service, for the feeling of being special for 30 minutes. The problem is that, when you get home and the champagne effect has worn off, you're left with just the product. Let's go back to that $1,750 Balenciaga trash bag. It wasn't a mistake. It was the ultimate symptom of an industry that has lost its way. It was the cynical admission that they're no longer selling products, but concepts and controversy. The death of luxury doesn't mean that expensive things will disappear. There will always be people willing to pay for exclusivity. It means the death of trust. The death of the implicit pact between the brand and the customer that said you pay an extraordinary price for extraordinary quality. That pact is broken. The emperor has no clothes. But this time, we all have a smartphone with a high-resolution camera to prove it. The real luxury of the 21st century isn't what you own, but what you understand. But now I want to know what you think. Do you think traditional luxury has really died? Or is it simply transforming for a new generation? And if you enjoyed this analysis about how big brands play with our psychology, you'll definitely love this video about the dark brainwashing Hermes does with its handbags.